We had a situation recently actually where a tenant fell behind.
A contract can always be got out of.
Amendments have been proposed to allow for the retention of fixed term tenancies.
Some tenants know how to play the system.
If it's mutually agreeable, then fine. A compromise amendment was passed. So the next proposed amendment, which is ironic, is the retaining fixed term tenancies. Now, let's bear in mind that the whole point of this bill was to give tenants better standards. Totally agree with that. To give tenants more security. Semi-agree with that. I mean, when you're living in someone else's house, it's someone else's house. So if you want security, you need to go into social housing, is my opinion. I'm going to get slaughtered for that in the comments, I'm pretty sure. But what they're trying to do here now is, the proposal is, amendments have been proposed to allow for the retention of fixed term tenancies, particularly up to 12 months, or to allow tenants and landlords to mutually agree to fixed terms. Because the irony here is, the proposal was to give tenants more security, as in no fixed term tenancy. I'm not quite sure how that gives them more security. If you want to give more security, you would say minimum term 3 years, right? But they said, let's abolish that and let's just do a rolling tenancy. And what they've suggested here is that if it's mutually agreeable, then fine, you can do a fixed term. If the tenant wants it, if landlord wants it, great. Some have also suggested allowing fixed terms to continue if both parties agree. The outcome, this is interesting, while largely resisted by the government, have no idea why, a compromise amendment was passed that effectively creates a minimum 6-month tenancy by allowing tenants to give 2 months' notice only after 4 months.
Well, that's like an existing 12-month contract with a 6-month break clause that they can already serve notice at months too.
Exactly.
If they're on a fixed 12-month.
I don't get that one. What I do get, if a tenant can move in for a week, serve a month's notice, which is what they're kind of proposing, and move out again, that's terrible on landlords. They're going to have so much check-in, check-out, redecorating.
Oh, the cost implications is horrendous.
Touching the wall up when the wall's dinked because it's not really classed as damage, it's more wear and tear. So that I kind of agree with this, but I just think, don't play with something that doesn't need playing with. If a tenant wants a 12-month tenancy and the landlord wants to give it to them, let them do it. If they only want a 3-month rolling, let them do that.
I mean, the thing is, and again, this is going back to COVID times, a contract is a contract. And as we say to tenants, when they want to serve notice early, if they're not within their notice period, a contract can always be got out of if the landlord and tenant are willing to negotiate. And obviously that's where we come into it. And, people's circumstances do change. Yeah. People can get relocated. They were thinking they were going to get relocated, but job opportunities come up and, I'm moving from Land's End to John O'Groats, but I'm stuck in a 12-month contract. There's things that we as an agent can do to stop loss for landlords and help a tenant. So things can always be changed, but it's one of those situations where it's got to be give and take on both parts. And I think with some tenants know how to play the system, and their circumstances may change. They don't want to go because of or renew a contract and want to get tied in again. They're looking to go to the council. The council will always turn around and tell them, stay there until eviction, because they won't rehouse them. They won't rehouse them if they're in rent arrears. So it's a snowball effect. It's not just the root cause, it literally splinters out. So each individual case has to be looked at. And again, I don't know whether the government and the people behind sorting this out have really looked into each situation, each scenario.
We had a situation recently actually where a tenant fell behind. And he, fell on hard times, I get it, but the landlord is a private landlord. She solely relies on that income to support her life. The council said to us, if you will allow him to stay living there, we'll clear the rent arrears. If you won't, we won't.
But then if he's fallen into hard times and rent arrears once...
Well, this was the problem, is I explained to them, look, it's nothing against him, nothing against you.
Yeah.
The landlord just needs someone that's got a bit more of a stable background now.
Yeah.
And he needs help from different parties, not Mrs. Miggins, who solely relies to feed herself from that rent. And they were like, okay, we can't clear his rent arrears, and I apologise. Like, it was just so...
flippant.
Yeah, and this ties in really well actually with the next proposal that they're proposing to change, which is rent arrears threshold and universal credit. So let's bear in mind as well that as part of the bill is that universal credit will now be classed as discrimination. As a private landlord, you pretty much can't decide who you do and don't want living in your property. Same with pets. Go back and watch videos on this. I won't go too deep right now, but there's new areas. So universal credit is classed as discrimination if you don't accept it. Pets, you have to give them permission to have pets unless there's a reasonable reason not to have one, like a first floor flat with no garden.
Yeah, I mean, that then comes down to, it'll be interesting actually to see if they then, I know we're talking about doing things with management companies. So if you're in a block of flats, yes, you are the leaseholder and that is your flat, but obviously you've got to abide by the rules of the leaseholders and the block.
Yeah.
So if the block rules turn around and say they won't allow pets, it means your landlord isn't allowed
Can't
to
allow
come.
pets.
So it's not the landlord that's discriminating, it's the freeholder of the block, and the block management agents have sort of said, these are our rules. So the landlord, he may say, yeah, I'm an animal lover and I will allow a dog in the property, but it's the blocks and the
mortgage companies sometimes as
well.
well.
Freeholders. Yeah.
Freeholders, management companies, mortgage companies. And interestingly, in a previous video, I mentioned this, but they're actually saying that they can't force the lenders or the management companies to take that out of their clauses, because also it's like noise as well, like so antisocial behaviour. Your dog barking's class is that. But what they will do, they won't force them to take it out, but those terms won't be legally admissible in court. They won't be allowed to pursue it in court. So the term's in there, but it's pointless because they can't do anything about it. That's a whole other story. But this whole rent arrears thing, I found this really interesting when I read this proposed update. So the proposal is that amendments have been proposed regarding the mandatory rent arrears grounds for possession. The bill initially aimed to increase the threshold from 2 months to 3 months arrears, which I, in a previous video, was like, that's terrible. If someone's in arrears, they're in arrears. They need to help to get out of arrears, but not necessarily help by the person's house they're living in. It's not like, have another month and see if they're in hard times and can't pay their rent, they're probably not going to be able to get out of it too quickly.